Hey, everybody, welcome to Off the Wall. My name is Mike, and today we are going to be talking about episode 4 of the Orville New Horizons, season 3 of the Orville, now on Hulu. And this review is coming up a few days late. I like to put these out on Fridays, the day after the episode is dropped on Hulu. But for those who've been keeping an eye on the news and on our Twitter feed, I opted to put off releasing this. I had already shot and recorded a review of the episode, and then given what's transpired on a governmental level here in the United States, I decided to scrap the review that I did and I record a new one because what's happened in our country, it's ironic and kind of mind-blowing how poignant elements of this episode were given the real world events that were going to take place the next day. Um, when you consider how long ago this show was shot and the episode released the day before the overturning of Roe v. Wade by the U.S. Supreme Court. And it plays into an element of this episode that I think at the time was just meant to be a finger on the pulse situation, as the Orville has done very well in its 3 seasons. Again, we've talked about it on these reviews, kind of harkening back to that older Star Trek feel of handling sociopolitical issues of the real world in a futuristic sense. In this episode, we see a delegation of Union officials led by Admiral Tom Halsey, played by Victor Garber, once again, journeying to the Krill homeworld, where we find out that Talea, the female Krill that that Ed had a relationship with kind of in an earlier season, has become a militant leader, and is trying to rise to power under and kind of reestablish the Krill's kind of theocratic dominance, or at least sense of dominance in the galaxy. But this delegation is going to the Krill homeworld by the current, at the time, Chancellor, to sign a treaty between the Krill and have them join and the Union and have them join the Union. And some civil unrest breaks out. The Chancellor loses his election to Talea, and Talea and her supporters immediately launch a coup and seize total control of the government. Through all of this, and she takes the Union delegation hostage, but has a conversation with Ed. He tries to talk her out of it into continuing with the treaty. She has no interest. And then he and the rest of the Union folks are set to be executed. In the midst of this, some we'll call them rebellion members, who don't support Talea, have actually been hiding what appears to be, well, is her daughter, who is actually hers and Ed's daughter, throughout the romantic relationship she had with Ed while she was undercover on the Orville. Apparently they conceived a child. However you do that kind of thing, it's Star Trek. We learn to live with it. And she's very clearly part human, but she has been hidden away. No one knows she exists other than the nurse that was hired by Talea. Talea has no contact with her. She simply pays to have her taken care of, gives her whatever she needs, but assumedly just has no contact with her whatsoever, wants nothing to do with her. And Ed confronts Talea and chastises her for it and says, hey, we can use her to show everyone that our people can coexist. And instead she says no, it would be an embarrassment. I didn't even want to have her. And the concept of abortion comes up, plain and simple. Ed is angry. He didn't know he had this daughter, and he, I think, would really like to be a part of her life, but also knows that at this point in time, it's probably for the best that he not be. He doesn't introduce himself to her as her father, just as just some guy basically. And he confronts Leia and says, if you didn't want to have her, why did you choose to keep her? You could have just not had her and been done with it. And we find out that aborting an abortion basically in the Krill is not only like illegal, um, people are sentenced to psychological torture for um, ending a pregnancy. We see where they basically take the parents into custody, scan their DNA, and use whatever technology they have to generate a holographic likeness of what their child could have been, and use that child to basically say, you know, mommy, daddy, why didn't you have me? Didn't you love me? Didn't you? And it's horrifying, horrifying. It's one of the darkest moments I have seen, not just from this show, but from a lot of sci-fi television shows in a long time. And I very much include that in every episode of The Boys that I've seen so far. It's disturbing. It's haunting and horrifying. Um, and ultimately, the crew is able to at least escape. Their potential treaty with the Krill is disbanded. We're not super sure where things sit with them right now. There's a mention made of they're going to end up having to fight a war on two fronts, because now they've got to deal with the Krill once again and the Kalon. And Ed, Ed makes a remark. He goes back to Earth and tells the Union command what the situation is, and what is really poignant is what they tell Ed, which is basically, it's your child, it's your choice what to do. They say we could very easily release this information to the Krill that this child exists and see what happens, but the union is going to let you, as kind of the parental representative of this child, it's your child and your choice. That concept comes up a lot, that idea of choice. And Ed remarks that, like, yeah, I didn't know she existed until a couple days ago, and now that I know she does, he's like, I miss her and I don't even know her. um it's a weird way of approaching kind of this idea of choosing to keep a child and being a parent, being present in a child's life. And then the episode ends with such a strangely touching moment where we find out that Talea is actually keeping very close watch on her daughter, just remotely. She's watching her play from a monitor, and I think deep down she does wish she could be this child's mother. And this is probably, I mean, this is obviously seeds planted for what's to come later this season. And that's the general gist of the episode. The episode, beginning to end, continues to be a very good episode. The only thing I'm still struggling with is Ensign Charlie Burke, who is again played by Ann Winters. I mentioned last week that in the first episode of this season, her inner struggle with having Isaac on board, given what happened with the Kalon, made for a very interesting show dynamic. But like I said last week, I need them to hurry up and go somewhere with it. This season's only going to have 10 episodes, and it's not sure whether or not there's going to be any more after this. But I really need them to get somewhere with this, because last week there was a whole complete emotional hissy fit had on the bridge during a moment of combat that just felt kind of shoehorned in for the sake of drama. And in this episode, there are two moments that really just, again, make me scratch my head with this character. One is at the beginning. The crew is celebrating because the security officer, Tala, has been promoted. She's now lieutenant commander, and they're celebrating in the simulator by getting drunk at a Wild West bar. And to try and join the festivities, Isaac shows up with a cowboy hat and a fake mustache stuck on the front of his, we'll call it a face, and it's hilarious. But he walks in the door, and it immediately just cuts to Ensign Burke just rolling her eyes and saying, like, oh, I guess the fun's got to come to an end now. And again, it's like, is this all you're going to be here to do, is to just like be smart and talk shit about Isaac? Is that all your character is at this point? Because aside from in the first episode where we realize she is actually a like brilliant whatever she's some kind of brilliant um a skilled I don't know if it's a mathematician or engineer or something like that. I don't completely understand it. Um but other than that, in that episode, we haven't seen where she fulfills much of a real role other than just being like a navigator or whatever her role is on the ship. Um, and in a strange, it's strange. So she helps pilot the shuttle to the Krill capital, but she's like, okay, well, I'll just hang back here with the shuttle till you guys are done. And Ed's like, no, you should come with us. And I don't really understand why. Um, but she does, and then she's just kind of there the rest of the episode. She doesn't really contribute a whole lot of anything to the rest of the episode. And but the reason I bring this up is because I don't fully understand why she has huge problems with Isaac being on board, given the Kalon situation, but has no problem with anything to do with the Krill. The Krill were their enemies for years before the Kalon even came along. And she's very open and trusting with the Krill, socializing with them and drinking with them and being kind with them and friendly with them, but is nothing but just abhorrent towards Isaac. Now I know there's the backstory with the friend being killed in the Kalon attack, and I get that, but it doesn't quite add up for me. Why she's being so, for lack of a better term, xenophobic towards the Kalon, but not the Krill. And again, it's like I really hope they're going somewhere with this, because it is even more this week really starting to wear on me. Now, all of that is just kind of all in all the episode. I give it like a 9 out of 10. Like, again, my only real qualm with it is just what they're doing with Ensign Burke. And I say all that because I now want to get to kind of like the main reason I struggle with getting this review put together, is because with everything going on here in the US with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which was a major Supreme Court decision dealing with abortion rights, and in here in the US, it's now been overturned, which we've already seen several states in the country have started immediately banning abortions or putting extreme limitations on them on a criminal level. It's got a lot of people scared and scratching their heads, especially given some other language that's come out from the Supreme Court since then. But regardless, the fact that the idea of like terminating a pregnancy is a major plot point in this episode, and is very likely setting up for major plot point for the entire season. That this episode came out the day before this Roe v. Wade overturning happened really shook me to my core, when I had just watched the episode and had done my review, and then I wake up the next morning ready to post the review on YouTube, and I see that this has happened, and it really did shake me. And it makes me wonder the way that things seem to be happening here in the States. There was a lot of parallels that could be drawn towards the way the Krill were operating. The United States is not a theocracy, but I'll be damned if lately we haven't been acting like one. The way things have been moving, the way that the Supreme Court is talking about making certain decisions, and seeing that scene of them just again performing this horrendous psychological torture on people who chose to terminate a pregnancy. And it just kind of makes you like, it really hits very close to home given the current state of things. And so I don't really have an end game with what I'm talking about here, more or less. Just I really, if you haven't considered that, or you haven't watched this episode yet, I implore you to go ahead and, first of all, I don't know why you're here, but just watch it. And if you haven't even considered that yet, like, watch it again now, knowing how things are going here in the States, or if you live here in the States, like, just knowing what you know now, watch this episode again, because it's going to make you see it, I think, in a slightly different light. And I think that there's a lot to be discerned that can be learned from what we see in the brief moments of this episode. The importance of choice, of body autonomy, a woman's right to choose. It's a lot, and it's weighed on me, and I think it's weighed on a lot of people. And if it hasn't, if it hasn't weighed on you, I can't really speak to you or your own situation or your beliefs or whatever they might be. I just know what mine are, and I know what I feel and how I think. And this has only made me appreciate what this show is giving me that much more, in terms of what I loved about, Star Trek and fantasy and sci-fi in general, for what kind of stories and lessons they're able to teach us and portray to us through this veil of the future. It really makes you look on the present in a different light. And so I hope that watching this episode makes you think about the current state of things, at least a little bit. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. No silly sign off today. Not feeling very silly right now with everything going on. But thank you guys for watching. If you're still here, thank you for indulging me. And I hope you'll check out the rest of the videos we have here on the channel as well. We just did our big Obi-Wan Kenobi wrap up. We're doing Ms. Marvel. We've got the Boys review is coming. Scheduling's been a little tough lately, so stuff's coming out a little bit later. It's been a very busy week for all of us, myself and Bogz especially. So stuff's coming. But check us out on Twitter. Everything's down in the description. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you guys again soon.